The man who helped make Rishi Sunak Prime Minister was rewarded a fortnight ago with a new role at the cabinet table. Sir Gavin Williamson, twice sacked from government, has in recent days been forced to deny multiple allegations he's a foul-mouthed bully. The Prime Minister's judgment in reappointing him is now in question. So too this commitment on the steps of Downing Street.
This government will have integrity, professionalism and accountability at every level.
Tonight, Sir Gavin's future is in fresh doubt as the woman who was his deputy 5 years ago when he was Chief Whip breaks her silence for the first time, alleging he presided over a culture of threats, intimidation and exploiting MPs' secrets.
How did his style vary compared to the others?
It was very different. I got the impression that he loved salacious gossip and would use it as leverage against MPs if the need arose.
You used that word leverage. Did he use that word? Did he make that explicit at any point?
Yeah, he did make it explicit. I remember an email in which he talks about an MP who had a few personal problems, decided that we should let it go because it could be leverage that would be used in the future.
The emails sent by Sir Gavin in 2017 discussed the behaviour the previous night of an MP who had been drinking heavily.
I actually think best not to say anything to him. It just helps by giving you personally a little more leverage in future.
Do any other incidents particularly stand out in your memory from your time working with him?
There were a few. The salacious gossip, which I've talked about, people's sexual preferences, that sort of thing. He loved all that. Would come into the office and say, guess who enjoys, some form of sex or another. I found very distasteful apart from anything. He also, on one occasion, we had an MP who got a few financial problems. Some financial help was given. It wasn't a great amount, but I do remember him asking me to give the MP in question the cheque, and he waved it under my nose and said, make sure when you give him this cheque, he knows that I now own him.
Own him?
Own him. I'm sure if you ask Gavin Williamson about this, he will say it was a joke. I don't think it was a joke.
What made you think it wasn't a joke?
It was the seriousness with which he said it.
It sounds bizarre, someone's debts being paid off by the party?
Yeah, I think it was by the party. It might have been from one of the party donors. As I say, it was a small amount. It does happen from time to time. If you're looking after people, maybe you do help them out in the short term, be it a loan or a gift. The point is, if that is then used as leverage, then the whole system is going to crumble. And where does that leave the Whip's office in terms of the care that it should be giving for people's personal mental health, physical health problems?
Did you give the MP the cheque?
I did give the MP the cheque. I didn't pass on the message.
Why did you decide not to pass on that message?
Because I thought it was wholly inappropriate.
Hearing you talk about people with, vulnerabilities, issues, problems, whatever those may be, being sort of exploited by Gavin Williamson, their problems used as leverage, you said. Is that unethical? How would you describe it?
It's unethical and immoral in my view. I mean, there's no place for that. It's shocking to even consider that you would use somebody's problems, be it physical or mental or drinking problems, as a means of getting them to vote with the government. It's completely unacceptable behaviour.
Is bad language acceptable behind the scenes in Westminster? I mean, this is a place where tempers run high.
No, it's never acceptable.
Did you witness him using bad language to other people?
I did witness him using bad language. I can remember him writing an email about civil servants, which was appalling language. I'm sure Gavin Williamson regrets the language. The point is, however frustrated, he used it.
What was the context of that using bad language to civil servants?
This was a civil servant who's trying to get one of the ministers in the department excused from a vote. There was no excuse for using that language.
In the email written in 2016, Sir Gavin said,
Always tell them to off, and if they have the to come and see me, jumped up civil servants.
Did you ever think about complaining about his behaviour?
I felt that the most important role I could play with Gavin Williamson, with his different, very alien style to me, the role that I could play was to make sure that MPs still trusted me. And if you like, I felt a little bit as if I was holding back the floodgates.
When you look at this incident about the cheque, we've had the texts to the former chief whip. Is it bullying behaviour, do you think, or not?
I mean, one can dance on the head of a pin about semantics. It feels threatening. If I'd been where Wendy Morton was, I would feel threatened. And he can be quite threatening in his manner and his attitude. I think it's an image he cultivates. I think feels that he's Francis Urquhart from House of Cards. I really did feel that. And the spider and everything else. This is an image that he cultivated.
Did you ever feel scared, threatened, intimidated?
No, but I'm very old. I'm much older than him. I'm very tough, and I would try not to feel intimidated. But it can feel like that, and even somebody as old and long a tooth as I am, he could be quite intimidating.
Well, what does it say about Rishi Sunak's judgment that he did decide to reappoint Gavin Williamson as minister?
I think at best it was probably a bit naive. I don't know that there are many people that would hang out the bunting to see Gavin Williamson back in government. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask Rishi Sunak why he did appoint him.
Are other people scared of Gavin Williamson?
Yes, I think they are.
There might be people watching this who think, well, you lost the whip in 2019 over Brexit. You then lost your seat because you stood as an independent. You know, people might think that you have an axe to grind, that you're getting your revenge on the party you fell out with.
Oh, good heavens, no. I didn't fall out with the party. I fell out with Boris Johnson, but not the party.
What made you decide to speak out now, then?
I think it was seeing the text messages in the press that has made me speak out. It's time to speak out. It's time to speak out against this sort of macho culture that I think has got more present in Parliament than when I left.
Anne Milton, Gavin Williamson's former deputy, speaking to me earlier. Well, earlier today, as Cabinet ministers made their way to Downing Street for their weekly meeting with the Prime Minister, I asked some of them what they thought of Sir Gavin Williamson's behaviour, including those allegations reported in The Guardian that he told an MOD official to slit their own throat. He strongly denied that allegation, saying he had enjoyed good working relationships with officials he'd worked with. Hello. Should Sir Gavin be sacked, Michael Gove?
Morning.
Does he have your full confidence?
Very nice.
Is that appropriate language to use?
Morning.
Is it appropriate language to use? Should Gavin Williamson resign, sir?
Hello.
Are you scared of him?
I'm sorry.
Grant Shapps, do you think Gavin Williamson should resign?
Sorry?
Do you think Gavin Williamson should resign?
Well, look, as you know, there's ongoing work by Central Office, and I know that they'll be reporting in good time.
Is he a bully, though?
Not in my experience, but clearly he shouldn't have sent those emails. I think he's recognised that and he's apologised.
Telling someone to
it.
slit their throat?
Well, look, I don't think there was a formal complaint, so let's wait and see.
It was
what's
raised
said
with
about
HR.
Well, again, as I say, I don't think there's anything formal, but I'll leave it to the folks in here. You'll appreciate I don't actually know the detail of that one.
OK, thank you. Well, tonight, Conservative head office did not respond directly to our new allegations, but told us that if CCHQ were to provide direct support to a member of Parliament in financial difficulties, it would be in line with the prevailing House of Commons and political finance regulations and guidance. The government and Sir Gavin Williamson are both yet to respond. So what is Sir Gavin's future, and what does his alleged conduct say about the Prime Minister's judgment in reappointing him? Well, let's go to our policy correspondent, Paul McNamara, in Westminster. Paul.
Yeah, well, both of those things are in question tonight, and pressure is mounting. Just in the last few minutes, both The Guardian and The Times are reporting that the former aide from the Ministry of Defence, who claims that they were bullied by Gavin Williamson, has now complained to Parliament's Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme. So as of right now, there are 3-ish investigations into Gavin Williamson, and the language, the strength of the language being used by Downing Street to back him seems to have lost a bit of force. So the 2 definite investigations are Parliament's bullying watchdog and the Conservative Party itself. The position from Downing Street the whole way through has been, yes, we back Gavin, the Prime Minister backs Gavin Williamson. Well, this afternoon there seems to be a third informal investigation launched by Downing Street, and the Prime Minister's spokesperson was asked this afternoon, OK, will the Prime Minister wait for those first 2 official investigations to be concluded before making a decision about Gavin Williamson and what's to happen to his future? Prime Minister's spokesperson said, I don't think necessarily it feels that the idea would be for him to wait until both of those things have fully concluded. Obviously, he would act if and when he felt appropriate to do so. The if and when will be affected by the testimony tonight of Anne Milton. General rule of thumb in Westminster is if the drip, drip, drip of allegations all of a sudden turn into a flood, you are in trouble.
Paul, thanks very much. Well, the chair of the Labour Party, MP Annalise Dodds, joins us from Westminster now, and with me here in the studio is Lord Kerslake, a former head of the civil service, who's now crossbench peer appointed by Labour to review how it was run. Annalise Dodds first. Wanted to get your reaction to the allegations contained in our interview with Anne Milton about the idea that this pressure was brought to bear on MPs with personal problems. Is this beyond what whips normally do?
Well, of course it is. It's appalling behaviour. It's the kind of behaviour we might expect from a gangland TV drama, not from people running our government. And of course, Gavin Williamson currently is part of that. He is sat around the cabinet table. Rishi Sunak decided to place him at the cabinet table, knowing that there were allegations about his behaviour previously, knowing that he'd not met the standard needed for a minister previously. And unfortunately here, Rishi Sunak seems to be placing his own internal party management above the interests of our country and having ministers who really can do the job and do it with integrity, which of course Rishi Sunak said he was going to restore to government after so much Conservative failure, but which I'm afraid he really is not demonstrating now.
I mean, Downing Street says it still retains confidence in Gavin Williamson. He denies he's a bully, but I suppose it's possible that he may be nearing the end of his tenure, in which case, aren't we all overestimating his importance? The matter would end there if he was let go from government.
But of course, this isn't just a problem because of Gavin Williamson. It's a problem because of Suella Braverman as well. And the problem is the Prime Minister's judgment. Rishi Sunak has now decided on 2 occasions to appoint people to very senior roles, knowing that there were serious issues with their judgment and behaviour. Obviously, in Braverman's case, that she had broken rules designed to protect our national security. Right. In Williamson's case, previous severe failures when he was a minister before that have already been publicly reported on. And in both cases, Sunak placed his party above the interests of our country. That's really what's at issue here.
I mean, we haven't got time to discuss the allegations against Suella Braverman tonight, but we have reportedly the MOD official who, Gavin Williamson is alleged to have been nasty, pretty abusive to. He denies the allegations, but that's the claim. This official has now made a formal complaint, we're told. Your response to that?
Well, if obviously that behaviour did take place, it's absolutely appalling. And of course, Rishi Sunak said that he was going to have in place an independent ethics advisor who would be able to deal with these kinds of issues for government. One of the reasons why there's all this confusion around different investigations at the moment around government is because there's still no independent ethics advisor that, of course, Sunak promised that he's still not delivered. He's found the time to appoint Williamson, but not to appoint an independent ethics advisor who could have looked at these issues about the relationship, clearly a very toxic relationship, it seems, between his ministers, the people he's appointed, and their civil servants.
Annalise Dodds, thanks very much for speaking to us tonight. Let's turn now to Lord Kerslake, who's here in the studio with me. If you were head of the civil service right now, you've had the allegations that we've been reporting on tonight. You've got the allegations from the MOD official. It's a kind of drip, if you are. We didn't get a formal response from Gavin Williamson or the government. Gave them the chance, but they didn't respond. What would your advice be in Downing Street now if you were still there?
Well, by any measure, that was a quite extraordinary and terrible interview. And it wasn't just the individual statements that he made, which were appalling. It was the whole culture of fear and intimidation that clearly was present. And it came from his deputy in very stark terms. When you add that up to the 3 complaints that are subject to 3 different investigations, I personally think my advice to the Prime Minister would be his position is untenable and you should either fire him or ask for his resignation.
Might he say in mitigation, if he might be arguing this with the Prime Minister right now, that this is just the kind of normal warp and weft of politics and that's what happens, and it may not be very savoury, but that is what happens behind closed doors in Westminster?
Well, there's rough and tumble in politics. There's also points where it gets very heated. Everybody understands that. But I think what we're hearing now, and I'm afraid it's backed up by other civil servants that I've had contact with who work with him, is really quite different. It's systemic bullying and harassment. And that I don't think can stand with a Prime Minister who's set higher standards for the conduct of government, rightly set them, and I believe him when he says it, but he's got to take the decisions when they're inconvenient, as this one will be, as well as when they're convenient.
I mean, he denies bullying, but is there a sort of grey area where ministers who are pushy and demanding might get a bit of blowback from civil servants?
Yes, he should be subject to an investigation, of course, and the sooner we get the new independent ethics advisor for the Prime Minister following the resignation of Lord Geidt, the better. But I think we already know from what we see on record that his behaviour has been highly questionable. And I think this interview is, in my view, seriously bigger than anything we've seen before. And I think points to an issue that can't wait now for these investigations to conclude.
Right, so what you've heard from Anne Milton tonight, in your view, tips it over the edge?
Yes, in a word. I think it is one of the most terrible interviews I have ever seen. And I don't think you can defend that in any way, shape or form as just the rough and tumble of British politics. We do, as she said, rightly in my view, need to change the way we conduct our business.
Lord Kerslake, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.